What's up guys, Everyone is here back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. In today's video, I'm going to be going over two big buffs that came into the game over the last couple of days, and they will be introduced in this next upcoming patch, which will also be going live, I believe, with the Fusion as well. So stay tuned. I will be having another video come out soon about the brand new Fusion and my thoughts on that as well. So let's do this. Alright guys, so in today's video we got Vitus the Anointed as well as Holstring, who are going to be getting updates. So Vitus is a Sacred Order Void Legendary Champion. He has gotten some upgrades and he's going to be a lot stronger than he was. He was pretty trash. Nobody typically used him. I'd never personally faced him ever. And yeah, he's going to be a lot better than he was before. So right now, currently, attacks one enemy 2 times on the A1. First hit heals this champion by 30% of the damage inflicted. Second hit, 65% chance of placing a fear for 1 turn. If the target's a boss, the second hit has a 65% chance of placing a decreased speed for 2 turns instead. It's a kind of meh ability in my opinion, and it requires accuracy. A2 attacks all enemies before attacking, removes all increased defense, ally protection, strengthen buff from enemies. This cannot be resisted, so that's strong. Will also ignore 30% of each target's defense, boost this champion's turn meter by 30% for each enemy alive after the attack. Now, the issue with this guy is not that his ability, strips and everything and stuff like that. That's really strong. The not being able to resist, stripping of the defense, the ally protection, strength, and that's all very strong for this guy's kit. It's kind of bad against polymorph because he can get sheeped, but the ignoring defense as well on top of it is huge, and then boosting his turn meter for each enemy alive afterwards is okay, because you might not kill everybody with 1 hit, especially if they're really tanky champions or if you're facing like Harima, for example. But the issue with this guy really is his multipliers are so low. So he doesn't have crazy high multipliers, and I wish they were a little bit better, which I believe they may be buffing in the next patch. So attacks 1 enemy 2 times on the A3. First hit destroys enemy max HP by 25% of the damage dealt. Cannot destroy a single enemy's max HP by more than 75%. If it's a boss, destroys max HP equal to 35% of the damage dealt, which is pretty heavy. That's good against the Scarab boss as well, in case you wanted to try to use someone like him in Scarab. I guess you could. You could also place a decreased speed on the Scarab as well, which is pretty strong. The second hit will ignore 30% of the target's defense if they have no active skill on cooldown. If the target has any active skills, ignores 50% of defense. Wow. Okay, that's pretty strong too. But again, doesn't hit super hard. Ignores shield, unkillable, and block damage buffs. That's pretty strong as well. Let me take a look at this guy's multipliers so that way you guys can see what they look like. Alright, so in terms of his multipliers, the A1 has a 1.7 attack multiplier, and it's meh, it's decent, not very strong. You could get a guy like Epic, Phoenix, and Phoenix. Let me just look this up really quickly. Let's see what his multiplier is. On his A1, which is the strongest hitter in the game, and it's an Epic and also blocks revive, a 4.1 multiplier with 1 hit. So if he hits twice, Phoenix, then if they have any debuffs, it's an 8.2 multiplier. That's insane. Way stronger than a Void Legendary. Just ridiculous. This guy has a 1.7 on a 2-hitter, which is only going to give you 3.4 damage multiplier, which is not even as strong as 1 hit from Phoenix, okay? So that's why this guy needs multipliers increased. On his A2, Vitus has a 3.1 multiplier, which is also very low. It's not that strong. Again, it's not the fact that he has all the crazy mechanics here. This is awesome. It reads great on paper. He just doesn't hit hard at all. And then on his A3, by my hand, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. It only has a 2.5 multiplier. That's only a 5 multiplier. Epic champions hit harder than that on a single hit. It's so bad. And then his passive instantly resets the cooldown of one of this champion's random active skills whenever an enemy increases the cooldown of any of their skills. That's strong against, that's really strong against like warlords or Crixias or whatever. Grants an extra turn if a skill's cooldown was reset. After granting an extra turn, places this skill on cooldown. Will also grant an extra turn if an ally, mastery, artifact set, or accessory decreases the cooldown of any of this champion's skills. After granting an extra turn, places this skill on cooldown. So that's very strong for a passive. I will say that's really awesome. It's just his abilities are so weak hitting that you're just not going to take another turn in time to destroy the enemy team. That's why this guy's never used. Now with his buffs, let me take a look at what his buffs are going to be. All right, so here are his buffs here. You're going to see them in bold. So the main goal, they say, was to elevate Vitrious's damage capabilities, make him a force to be reckoned with in arena. From now on, he will ignore even more defense when attacking opponents, will be able to self-boost with offensive buffs, and have more damage-focused build since, in most cases, he no longer requires accuracy. Now, let's have a look at his kit. We have upgraded Vitrious's A1 with the True Fear, and moreover, the debuff becomes irresistible if its first hit heals this champion to full HP. I wonder if that works when he already has full health. Will it just allow him to have a True Fear irresistible if he already has full health and heals and he's still at full health? That's a good question that I may ask, but I haven't heard of it yet. If his A2 removes at least one buff from the enemy, Vitrius will buff himself instead with an increased attack and increased crit damage buff. That's pretty cool. Each hit of Vitrius A3 will now ignore 30% defense and destroy max HP by 25% of the damage dealt. If the target has any active skills on cooldown, Vitrius will ignore 50% defense instead of both of his hits. Okay. And for his passive, they reduced his cooldown from 5 to 4. So he does have inexplorable passive, which I went over. It's just going down one cooldown, so he can hopefully get back around to it again. So they're just simply changing on this A1. Second hit, 65% chance of placing a True Fear for one turn. This debuff cannot be resisted if the first hit fully heals. So you don't have to build him with accuracy anymore. So that's kind of nice. But again, it's the multipliers on this guy. It doesn't say that the damage is being increased, the multipliers. It just says that he's going to ignore more defense and he's going to have irresistible debuffs. So I don't know. I don't know if he's actually going to be as strong or stronger than he already is. He will be a little bit stronger for ignoring more defense, and you can stack more attack on him and crit damage because he doesn't require accuracy anymore. But again, I mean, he's still going to be a sheep magnet potentially, and he still has low multipliers based on what I'm reading. So let's keep reading though. The new change to the A2 is if at least one buff was removed, also places an increased attack and increased crit damage on this champion for 2 turns. I mean, again, it's the multipliers. It's not the increased attack and increased crit damage, stuff like that. Each hit ignores 30% of the target's defense on the A3. This is the change. Each hit will ignore 30% of the target's defense and destroy the enemy's max HP by 25% of the damage dealt. Okay. And then both of his hits will ignore 50% of the target's defense instead if the target has any active skills on cooldown. So if you pair him with like a Crixia, with a Warlord, things like that, he's going to do a lot better. But most players will ban the Warlord, ban the Crixia, things like that. So you kind of have to have both of them. You have to have a Crixia and a Yumeko, or a Warlord with a Yumeko, so on and so forth, to get this guy to really work. But again, it doesn't say anything about increasing his multipliers, which to me means he's still not going to be the best. Let's move on to the next champion. All right, so the next champion on their buff list is going to be Holstring, and he has an A1, attacks 2 times at random, places an increased attack on himself for 2 turns if it's critical. Okay. Attacks 3 times at random on his A2, will ignore 25% of defense to targets under Hex debuffs, and will ignore an additional 25% of defense against targets under Hex debuffs from the Bannerlord or Knight's Revenant. Okay, so that's interesting. I mean, most people don't use him in Arena, so this doesn't even come into play. Reality is people might use him in Hydra potentially, or most people typically use him in Fire Knight. That's kind of where he shines, but he drops off significantly for Fire Knight hard mode. And then on here, A3 attacks 4 times at random. Each hit, 75% chance of placing a Hex for 3 turns. Champions from the Bannerlord and Knight's Revenant factions cannot resist it. Each hit also has a 75% chance of stealing 25% of the target's turn meter, steals 50% of the turn meter instead, if the target is from the Bannerlords or Knight Rev. Again, it's so small, so niche. Only Bannerlords, only Knight Rev. Not really a huge fan of that. I mean, I wish they kind of opened it up for more factions, but it is what it is. If this champion's turn meter is at 75% or more after the steal, places a perfect veil on this champion for 2 turns. Plus in Hydra, like that's just never going to work with the Bannerlords and Knight Revenant faction turn meter, stuff like that. You can't steal the Hydra's turn meter. I mean, yeah, reality is you're only going to use him in Fire Knight right now. You're probably going to use him, maybe if you're earlier mid-game, you might use him in Arena, but you wouldn't use this guy in Endgame Arena at this time. So let's see what the buff is going to be. All right, let's see what they have to say. We got Holstring's buff here. With Holstring, they wanted to make him more reliable single target nuker, so his random attacks on A1 and A2 were replaced with single target multi-hitters. On top of the existing buffs and debuffs in his kit, his skill set was also enhanced by adding decreased speed perfect veil mechanics, but despite these changes, he remains a solid champion for PvE areas he was frequently used in, which is just simply Fire Knight, okay? Holstring's A1 will now attack one enemy 2 times and also decrease the enemy's turn meter if he's under Veil or Perfect Veil. So that's pretty cool. His A2 will now be prompt Holstring to attack one enemy 3 times, and they're adding up to 75% ignore of the target's defense from this skill alone. That's pretty crazy, which can be further increased with the help of masteries and artifacts. Dang! So he can ignore 100% of defense on the A2. He could actually be insane against Rhodos. I mean, Rhodos just keeps getting more counters against him over and over and over. But, you know, you got all these other champions that aren't getting counters against them other than like Narcissus versus Taras. Like, that was the only counter other than freezes and CC against Taras. And now we got to figure out how to kill Narcissus these days, right? So maybe Holstring could potentially come in and help you kill a Narcissus. So Holstring's A3 will now land decreased speed in addition with Hex and buff this champion with Perfect Veil. His passive was changed to make it a bit easier to gain Perfect Veil. He will now have to hit only one target, but the enemy should be under both Hex and decreased speed. So, I mean, that's kind of annoying. Just give him Perfect Veil, but whatever. So on the first ability, his upgrade is going to be, if this champion's under Veil or Perfect Veil, each hit has a chance of decreasing the target's turn meter by 15%. It's okay. I mean, if you're trying to build him as a straight nuker, you're probably not going to put a ton of accuracy on him. I mean, at least put like 300 accuracy if you can help it. But again, more accuracy means you're going to lose more damage stats typically. So not a terrible A1, not insane. On the A2 though, attacks one enemy 3 times, and currently the A2 is attacks 3 times at random. So that's a big change there. And the other change is will ignore a further 25% of the target's defense if they're also under decreased speed debuff. Will also ignore an additional 25% of the target's defense if they are from the Bannerlord or Knight's Revenant faction. So that's not bad. So Bannerlord meaning it's going to be your Taras, right? He should do good against Taras. Not insane, but if he's ignoring 100% of Taras's defense, hopefully he'll do good. But the thing with Taras is reduces damage from skills by 50%. So that's kind of insane by Taras's passive. So I think Holstring will do fairly decent against Taras since he's Bannerlord. And, you know, his ability goes based off of Bannerlords. Yeah, Bannerlords or Knight Rev. So for Knight Rev, would it also be King Narcissus? Yes, it would. So they're trying to buff him to be someone who can counter Narcissus as well as Taras. Okay, so maybe that is kind of good for Arena. Okay. All right, Holstring actually might be coming out of a lot of people's vaults and potentially killing off Narcissus and Taras. I mean, they're still going to be way stronger than, Holstring just because of the fact that they're a lot tankier. They're HP based, whereas Holstring's attack based. So they do have the upper hand on him because of that. So let's take a look at this further. On his A3, the only thing they changed was debuff for 3 turns, and 30% decrease speed debuff for 2 turns, but it's only going to be, it's still 4 attacks at random though, so they didn't change that one. I wish they did do it to a 4 hitter, you know, on one enemy. That would be pretty insane. So let's see. Champions from the Bannerlords and Night Revs cannot resist these buffs, these debuffs. Okay, that's pretty cool. So you don't need to put, so you're just basically bringing him in only against Taras and Narcissus. Because who else would you fight? I guess you could fight Aranda with him, but it seems like he's a Taras and Narcissus counter. And then lastly here, it says, also places a perfect veil buff on this champion for 2 turns after he does this attack. And then on the Hunter's Guide, if this champion attacks a target under Hex debuff and a decreased speed debuff, he'll place a perfect veil on himself for 1 turn. This effect will not activate when counterattacking. So I mean, it's decent. I think the Holstring has a better buff as compared to the Vitus, but who knows? Maybe Vitus comes out and we end up seeing that his multipliers increase, but it doesn't say damage increase. It just says ignoring defense and adding more buffs on himself. So based on that, it's not getting a multiplier increase. I hope it is, for the sake of those who actually have Vitus, or if I ever got a Vitus, I would hope that it is buffed in that way. He looks super cool. Not understanding the old man look, but hey, it is what it is. That's fine too. A lot of the Sacred Orders seem elderly. You got an Elder, looks well. You got Holstring, who looks older. You got Sir Nick, who's older. Falman's older. He's older. This guy looks a little bit older. Constantine, you know, it just seems like a lot of like elders in the Sacred Order. But either way, what do you guys think about the buffs? Do you like Holstring? Is he in your vault currently? Will you be pulling him out of your vault, or are you going to keep him in the vault? Same thing with Vitus. Are you going to keep him in the vault? We don't really know for sure until these buffs come into the game. But until then, hope you guys have a great day, great evening, and I will see you in a video soon. Take care.